In 2007, one company controlled 40% of every mobile phone sold on Earth. Not a third, not a quarter, nearly half, one company. And within 7 years it was gone, not bankrupt, not irrelevant in the way most companies go irrelevant slowly, quietly, with dignity. Gone, sold, dismantled. The phone division sold to Microsoft for $5.4 billion. Microsoft then wrote off $7.6 billion on that acquisition. Almost immediately, we'll get there. But first, you need to understand what Nokia actually was, because Big Phone Company does not cover it. Nokia was, for a stretch of the late 1990s and early 2000s, the most valuable company in all of Europe. Full stop. At its 2000 peak, Nokia's market capitalization hit roughly $250 billion. It represented at one point nearly 4% of Finland's entire GDP. 4% of a country. From one company. That makes it not just a corporation, it makes it a geopolitical force. And it didn't start in tech. Nokia was founded in 1865, yes, 1865, as a paper mill on the banks of the Nokianverta River in Finland. It spent the better part of a century making rubber boots, cables, and toilet paper. This is not a metaphor. They literally made toilet paper. The pivot to electronics came in the 1960s. The pivot to mobile came in the 1980s. And by the 1990s, Nokia had done something almost no company has ever done. It correctly identified the next massive technology wave, bet everything on it, and won. The Nokia 1011, launched in 1992, was the first mass-produced GSM phone. By 1998, Nokia had overtaken Motorola to become the world's largest mobile phone manufacturer. They weren't chasing the market. They were the market. The 3310, launched in 2000, became a cultural artifact. An estimated 126 million units sold. It was durable, intuitive, and cheap enough for mass adoption across the developing world. Nokia understood something its competitors didn't. The phone was becoming personal, almost intimate. Their design teams in the late 1990s were producing concept phones with touchscreens, cameras, and internet connectivity. Internal Nokia documents and subsequent reporting suggest the company had prototypes that looked eerily close to what Apple would eventually release. In 1999, 8 years before the iPhone, read that sentence again and let it settle. Nokia had the vision. Nokia had the engineering talent. Nokia had the market dominance, the supply chain, the brand recognition, and the capital. What Nokia did not have was the willingness to disrupt itself. This is where the story stops being about technology and starts being about psychology. Specifically, the psychology of people who have won so completely that they cannot imagine losing. Nokia's internal culture by the mid-2000s had calcified around one thing: protecting the existing business. Symbian, their operating system, was clunky, difficult to develop for, and built for a world of physical keypads. Engineers inside Nokia knew this. Researchers at Nokia knew this. Middle management at Nokia reported knowing this. But Symbian was profitable. And profitable things are very hard to kill from the inside, especially when the people at the top are being compensated based on short-term numbers. A 2010 academic study by INSEAD researchers described Nokia's internal culture as one where middle managers were afraid to deliver bad news upward. Fear, not ignorance, was the operating system. January 9, 2007. Steve Jobs walks onto a stage in San Francisco and holds up a phone with no keyboard. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator, he says. Are you getting it? Nokia's share price barely moved that day. The company's official response was, in essence, we're not worried. They were not worried. A Nokia executive was reportedly quoted as saying the iPhone had nice features, but questioned whether it could scale. Their market research indicated consumers wanted physical keyboards. Their consumers, it turned out, had not yet been shown what they actually wanted. In 2007, Nokia still shipped 435 million phones. Apple shipped its first iPhones, roughly 1.4 million units. On raw numbers, Nokia was correct not to panic. This is the most dangerous moment in any competitive landscape. when the threat is small enough to dismiss and large enough to be fatal. Google launched Android in 2008. Nokia watched. The App Store launched in 2008. Nokia watched. By 2009, Apple's iPhone revenue alone was approaching Nokia's entire device and services revenue. Nokia was still watching. The board's response was to accelerate investment in Symbian. They poured resources into a platform that developers were actively fleeing, building a taller lighthouse on a sinking island. In 2010, they launched the Nokia N8 running Symbian. Reviews described the interface as outdated. Sales were disappointing. The word outdated would follow Nokia like a shadow for the rest of its independent life. Then came Stephen Alop. Appointed CEO in September 2010, he was the first non-Finnish CEO in Nokia's history. He came from Microsoft. Some analysts would later call his appointment a poisoned chalice. Others would call it something less charitable. The debate has never fully resolved. In February 2011, Alop sent an internal memo to staff that was almost immediately leaked. It compared Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil platform. "We are standing on a burning platform," he wrote, "and we must decide how we are going to change our behavior." It was a brutally honest diagnosis. The prescription that followed was considerably more controversial. Nokia abandoned Symbian. They announced a partnership with Microsoft, betting the company's smartphone future on Windows Phone. Not Android, which was free, open source, and already gaining developer momentum, but Windows Phone, a platform with roughly 2% market share. The board approved it. Of course they did. The announcement cratered Nokia's stock by 14% in a single day. Developers began migrating away from Symbian even faster, knowing it was now officially dead. Meanwhile, Windows Phone never gained the app ecosystem it needed to compete. Microsoft's own App Store lagged behind iOS and Android by tens of thousands of applications. Between 2007 and 2013, Nokia's global smartphone market share collapsed from roughly 50% to under 5%. Under 5%. That is not a decline. That is an erasure. The company that was the market became a rounding error in someone else's quarterly report. In September 2013, Microsoft acquired Nokia's Devices and Services division for approximately $5.4 billion. For context, Nokia's peak market cap had been $250 billion. They sold their phone business for roughly 2 cents on the dollar of what the whole company had once been worth. Microsoft, having paid $5.4 billion for the division, wrote down $7.6 billion in 2015, one of the largest write-downs in tech history. They laid off approximately 25,000 employees, most of them former Nokia workers. The Windows Phone platform was quietly discontinued in 2017. The platform Nokia abandoned everything for lasted 6 years. Then it also died. Here is the lesson. And it is not innovate or die, that's a bumper sticker, not a business insight. The real lesson is this: Nokia saw the future. Their own engineers built prototypes of it. The failure was not imagination. The failure was institutional cowardice. A culture so structured around protecting existing success that it made honest internal communication functionally impossible. When the people closest to the problem are afraid to tell the people with the power what they already know, that's not a technology problem. That's a leadership problem. And leadership problems don't show up on a balance sheet until it's far, far too late. Nokia still exists, technically, as a telecommunications infrastructure company, largely invisible to consumers. The phone that was once in the pocket of 1 in 3 people on Earth is now a museum exhibit. Not a metaphor. An actual museum exhibit, in Finland. If you want to understand how BlackBerry made the exact same mistake at the exact same moment and somehow managed to make it worse, that story is next. Subscribe for more hidden empires.